Alright, this is Deuteronomy 22 in the MacArthur Study Bible. Let's begin. You shall not see your brother's ox or his sheep going astray, and hide yourself from them. You shall certainly bring them back to your brother. And if your brother is not near you, or if you do not know him, then you shall bring it to your own house, and it shall remain with you until your brother seeks it. Then you shall restore it to him. You shall do the same with his donkey, and so shall you do with his garment. With any lost thing of your brother's, which he has lost and you have found, you shall do likewise. You must not hide yourself. You shall not see your brother's donkey or his ox fall down along the road and hide yourself from them. You shall surely help him lift them up again. A woman shall not wear anything that pertains to a man, nor shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all who do so are an abomination to the Lord your God. If a bird's nest happens to be before you along the way in any tree, or on the ground with the young ones, or eggs with the mother sitting on the young or on the eggs, you shall not take the mother with the young. You shall surely let the mother go, and take the young for yourself, that it may be well with you, and that you may prolong your days. And when you build a new house, then you shall make a parapet for your roof, that you may not bring guilt of bloodshed on your household if anyone falls from it. And you shall not sow your vineyard with different kinds of seed, lest they yield of the seed which you have sown, and the fruit of your vineyard be defiled. And you shall not plow with an ox and a donkey together. You shall not wear a garment of different sorts, such as wool and linen mixed together. You shall make tassels on the four corners of the clothing with which you cover yourself. And if any man takes a wife and goes into her and detests her, and charges her with shameful conduct, and brings a bad name on her, and says, I took this woman when I came to her, I found out she was not a virgin. And then the father and mother of the young woman shall take and bring out the evidence of the young woman's virginity to the elders of the city at the gate. And the young woman's father shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter to this man as a wife, and he detests her. Now he has charged her with shameful conduct, saying, I found your daughter was not a virgin, and yet there are evidences of my daughter's virginity. And they shall spread the clothes before the elders of the city. Then the elders of that city shall take that man and punish him, and they shall fine him 100 shekels of silver, and give them to the father of the young woman, because he has brought a bad name on a virgin of Israel. And she shall be his wife. He cannot divorce her all of his days. But if the thing is true, and the evidences of virginity are not found for the young woman, then they shall bring out the young woman to the door of her father's house, and all the men of the city shall stone her to death with stones, because she has done a disgraceful thing in Israel, to play the harlot in her father's house. So you shall put away the evil from among you. If a man is found lying with the woman married to a husband, then both of them shall die. The man that lay with the woman, and the woman, so you shall put away the evil from Israel. If a young woman who is a virgin is betrothed to a husband, and a man finds her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of that city, and you shall stone them to death with stones. And the young woman, because she did not cry out in the city, and the man, because he humbled his neighbor's wife. So you shall put away the evil from among you. But if a man finds a betrothed young woman in the countryside, and the man forces her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do nothing to the young woman. There is in the young woman no sin deserving of death, for just as when a man rises against his neighbor and kills him, even so is this matter. If he found her in the countryside, and the betrothed woman cried out, for he found her in the countryside, and the betrothed woman cried out, but there was no one to save her. If a man finds a young woman who is a virgin, who is not betrothed, and he seizes her and lies with her, and they are found out, then the man who lay with her shall give to the young woman's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has humbled her. He shall not be permitted to divorce her all of his days. And a man shall not take his father's wife, nor uncover his father's bed. And may God bless the reading of the word. Let us look at it. There's a lot here. Alright, but in this chapter all the way to 26:19, there's a little note here. Even though I'm not going to go that far yet. Well, not in this video. While loving God was the first duty, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and loving other came next. Loving one's neighbor came next. In this section, the law of loving one's neighbor is applied to domestic and social relationships here. So first you have it in dealing with an animal that belongs to a fellow Israelite. So, the Israelite must not hide his eyes from such an obvious loss. It was his duty to pursue and bring back the lost property of his neighbor, whether that's an animal or anything. And if he did nothing, then that would be a sin. Alright, so if there's an animal that is lost or something that you find, you better return it or hang on to it until the owner seeks it and eventually finds it. Yep. And it's too bad they didn't have a lost and found back then. Oh well. Alright, now verse 5. This one I'm going to say some stuff on, because this is a pretty interesting one. A man shall not wear anything that pertains to a man, nor shall a man put on a woman's garment. For all who do so are an abomination to the Lord your God. Ooh. Found only here in the Pentateuch, this statute prohibited a man from wearing any item of feminine clothing or ornamentation, or a woman from wearing any item of masculine clothing or ornamentation. So basically, any clothing that would meant to get someone to see that you're wearing something of the opposite sex would be prohibited. So a man cannot wear a woman's dress, and a woman should not be wearing a man's suit or whatever. So a woman should not buy men's clothes in the men's clothing section and vice versa. So, even though sadly those distinctions are being erased. And I'm going to say something about some of that in a minute. Alright, but if you do such things, you're an abomination to the Lord. So the same word translated abomination was also used to describe God's view of homosexuality. Really, it's abomination. It's detestable. God absolutely despises it and despises everyone who does it. This instance specifically outlawed transvestism. Wearing the clothes of the opposite sex. And the creation order distinctions between male and female were to be maintained without exception. God created them male and female. And he wants that distinction to be kept. Period. Yeah, and that's what he wants. And anything that is getting rid of that distinction is a sin. So whether it's transvestism or even transgenderism. Yep, so not only is not only dressing as the opposite sex is a sin, but even identifying as the opposite sex would be a sin as well. So, yeah, that is a sin, because you're blurring the lines of the male and the female distinctions. So all this stuff that we see in our culture with the transgenderism and the drag queens and all that, yeah, that stuff goes against this commandment. Yeah, but this is Old Testament. We're not under the law. Yeah, but didn't Jesus fulfill the law? Isn't the law done? Yeah, well, the law is still reinforced in the New Testament. You still got commands that carry over into the New Testament. And anything that would be an abomination to the Lord, yeah, then it would still be an abomination now. Yeah, God does not change. Yeah, he does not change, and what he determines and the stuff that he determines as right and wrong, that doesn't change either, because that's his moral law. And the moral law is the one that carries over into the New Testament. You know, the Ten Commandments, all those carry over. Yeah, flee sexual immorality and all that. Commandments in the Torah, those moral commandments carry over. The sacrificial commandments, and those commandments about the offerings, the grain offering, the burnt offering, and all that, the Day of Atonement, all that stuff in Leviticus, it was all a shadow of Christ. Yeah, Christ fulfilled all that. So that is fulfilled, since he's the ultimate sacrifice once for all. So Hebrews makes that clear. And then, of course, dietary laws, some of those other laws, like dietary and all that, that was to separate Jews and Gentiles, to keep the Jews from acting just like the Gentiles. Or I guess in this case, the Canaanites here, even though Canaanites are Gentiles, since everyone that's not Jewish is a Gentile. But anyway, but all the moral laws of loving God and loving neighbor, anything that goes against how God designed the world to work, such as the distinctions between male and female and all that, anything that goes against that is a sin. So there you go. And then marriage between man and woman, that's how he designed it. Anything else is a sin. Period. And it needs to be repented of, just like every sin in general. So for the people that are in that community, I just pray that if you hear this, yeah, you may think this is transphobic or homophobic or whatever. You may hate this, but I mean, it is loving to tell the truth, no matter what. It's not always easy. Sometimes it's scary too. Sometimes don't always have the courage to, but it just needs to be told. And you can be forgiven of these sins along with any other sin. Yeah, whatever sin it is, whether it's transgenderism or whatever, or homosexuality or abortion or drunkenness or greed, you name it. I mean, any sin you can be forgiven of. You just need to cry out to God to forgive you, and you need to own your sin and confess it and not hide it or make excuses. And if you truly are repentant and have a sorrowful heart over it, he will forgive you. All right. And then also there's a parody that's going to be on this topic of this verse, so stay tuned. Yeah, stay tuned for when it comes out. All right. So verse 6, you have a bird's nest here. If a bird's nest happens to be before you along the way in any tree or on the ground with young ones or eggs, with the mother sitting on the young or on the eggs, you can't take the mother with the young. Let the mother go, take the young for yourself. So this is found here only in the Pentateuch. This law showed that God cared for the long-term provisions for his people. So by letting the mother go, food could be acquired without killing the source of future food. So here he even got God's care for even the animals. Yeah, but animals still get sacrificed. Yeah. Well, it's the shedding of the blood that covers the sins, ultimately through Jesus. So, but I'm sure the animals, when they did get sacrificed, they tried to make sure it was pretty painless. Like the breaking the neck, I think in the previous chapter, I think in that Prager video I read, like they did that very swiftly so that there would be no pain on the part of the animal. So, alright, 22 verse 8. Yep, you better build a parapet for your roof. This refers to the roof of a home in ancient Israel. This is found only here in the Pentateuch, which was flat and usually reached by outside stairs. So to prevent injury or death from falling, this parapet or fence or railing was to be built around the roof. This too expressed love for those who might otherwise be injured or killed. There you go. And then don't sow different kinds of seed in your vineyard. Now this aim of legislation seems to be to maintain healthy crops, keeping the seeds separate from one another. Okay. And then you can't plow with an ox and a donkey together. So according to the dietary laws prescribed earlier in chapter 14, the ox was a clean animal, but the donkey was unclean. So even more compelling was the fact that these two different animals couldn't together plow a straight furrow. Their temperaments and natural instincts and physical characteristics made it impossible. As with God's seed, God is protecting his people's food. Okay. And then you make the tassels on the four corners of your clothing, which I think in Jesus' day, the Pharisees would take this commandment to the extreme, where they would have a lot of that worn, but really they were just showing off, I guess, how spiritual and close they were to God. But this is not about you showing off, but I guess that's what it was taken to. So, there's a note in in Numbers 15, but I don't have that there, so that might come in a future video, Lord willing. Alright, and then you got these final verses in this chapter, 13 through 30, about family life. So, from 13 through 21, you have this Israelite who doubted the virginity of his bride, and he was to make a formal accusation to the elders of the city. So if her parents gave proof of virginity showing that the accusation was false, the husband was to pay a penalty, and he was prohibited from divorcing the woman. So he accused her of, not being a virgin previously, but that's proven to be false. He's got to pay the family, and then he can't divorce the woman ever. But if she's found not to be a virgin, then she was to be put to death, because basically she was deceiving and enticing the man, I guess. And she should have been honest about her status. And she wasn't. Yeah. Now, evidence of the young woman's virginity. Probably this would be a blood-stained garment or a bed sheet from the wedding night. Because I think doesn't it say something about a bed sheet? I think that's what I thought it said in here. Let me see. Oh yeah, they shall spread the cloth before the elders of the city. So I guess this is one way of having the proof. Just to see, maybe. Alright, but if the person, but if the man was wrong in his accusation, then you would have to pay the 100 shekels of silver. Now shekels, this word is not in the Hebrew text, but the context suggests it. So a shekel, it weighed about 0.4 ounces. So the total fine would be about 2.5 pounds of silver. So 100 shekels of silver. Yeah, Jesus was betrayed for 30, so not very much. I don't know what the dollar amount would be if we were able to convert this. But anyway, but if anybody knows, then you can leave it in the comment section. Alright, 22 through 29, you have this section about adultery. Adultery was punished by death for the two found in the act. So if the adulterous persons were a man with the woman who was pledged to be married to somebody else, this consensual act led to the death of both parties. So if she was pledged to be married to somebody else and she slept with another man, yeah, willingly, then clearly they're both at fault here. Alright. However, if the man forced or raped the woman, then only the man's life was required. Yeah, if the woman didn't cry out for help in the city, if she didn't cry out for help or whatever, or tried to get away, then clearly she consented to the act, and so therefore she would be guilty. Alright, but if she was forced or raped, then the man would be killed only. But if the woman was a virgin, not pledged in marriage, then the woman had to pay a fine and marry the girl and keep her as his wife as long as he lived. So basically in those first two circumstances, it's a man sleeping with the betrothed woman. And if this woman is betrothed to somebody else, then both of them would get the death penalty for adultery. But if the man rapes another betrothed woman, then only the man would be executed. But if a man sleeps with a woman that's not betrothed, who's just a virgin, well, the woman needs to be a virgin before she gets married. So, because God wants sexual purity. But if the man finds a woman that's not betrothed and he lies with her, then you got to pay the father 50 shekels of silver, and you're going to be her husband, and you can't divorce her all the days of your life. So you forfeit your right to divorce. There you go. So in no case was a man to marry. And now you get to the final verse here. A man shall not take his father's wife, nor uncover his father's bed. In no case was a man to marry his father's wife or to have sexual relations with her, or mother's wife, or whatever. So basically a ban of incest. So this probably has relations with the stepmother in view, though incest was clearly forbidden. Leviticus 18, 6 through 8. So rape is forbidden here, and so is incest. So there you go. And then also, I think it was in 1 Corinthians 5, when Paul told the Corinthians to kick out a man who was sleeping with his father's wife or something like that. I could be wrong. But a man sleeping with a relative. And Paul told the Corinthians to kick that man out of the church, because not only were they not doing something about it, they approved of it. And they had no shame, and they should have been ashamed, since that sin was going on in the church, and that guy was violating that command right there in verse 30. Yeah, put away the evil from among you. And that's probably where, yeah, and Paul actually said, purge the evil person from among you. I think he gets that from some of these verses here. It says, you shall put away the evil from among you. You have it several times in this chapter. So I think whenever Paul wrote that to the Corinthians, he was basing what he wrote off of some of these scriptures here in the Old Testament. Yeah, put away the evil from among you, and that command at the very end of this chapter. Don't sleep with your father's wife. There you go. Oh man, how much better would the modern church be today if we just had the guts to do church discipline. Yeah, a lot of us just don't have the guts to confront sin when necessary. Yeah, we're just so afraid. Yeah, but Lord, help us to have the courage to obey your word, even regardless of what happens. Please help us to have the courage in this day of fear. All right, well, I'll see what Prager has to say in the next video. In the meantime, God bless you, and may the grace and mercy be with you all. Amen.